Excited to have so many awesome people here. I see Emily, I see Jay, I see Bastian. So many great people turning out, and I am so thrilled to introduce you to Hatu, who is a recruiting rock star, and I'm so excited to have you learn from tonight. So please give Hatu a ton of love in the chat. And with that said, we're gonna dive in. And just so you know, for anyone who's come to any of my sessions before, this is not gonna be a PowerPoint session, just going through a lot of slides. We're gonna be doing live demos. We're gonna be doing questions with Hatu. So get ready to hold on to your horses. But that being said, Hatu, let's kick things off. Tell people a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm really excited to be here. Like you said, I've been doing this for a little while. I'm a recruiter right now at Riot Games. I've really recruited across the spectrum of different industries and companies, gaming, insurtech, financial services. And I'm really passionate about being able to help people understand more of what recruiting looks like from the back end, right? Obviously, you're looking for a job as a job seeker, and you know it from your perspective, but I want to help you understand a little bit more about what the process looks like from our perspective. Obviously, to be able to help you get the job of your dreams, be able to get into the industry of your dreams, and be able to maximize your market value. I'm so passionate about careers and opportunities that in my free time, I host a podcast called Power Pivots that's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we really explore demystifying career shifts and changes there. So if you're so inclined, give us a listen. And from an educational standpoint, I went to University of Michigan for my MBA, like Jeremy did, go blue. And I went to Cornell University for undergrad, and I studied industrial and labor relations there.
Go blue and go big red.
Yes, and go big red.
and go League of Legends.
Oh, yes.
I feel like
absolutely.
as someone who last played video games in the age of Mario,
yeah,
I see Randy's. I think I speak for all League players when I say Rito, please. I'm totally out of my league here, so to speak.
There you go.
Okay, but in any case, so thrilled to have you here, Hatu. And I love the fact that you're willing to sort of tear down that black box that sits between job seekers and what's happening on the inside. Because I think we all deserve to understand how do we get access to great opportunity. So let's start with the first big thing. So recruiters are like any other professional. You guys have incentives. You guys have goals that you're shooting for. Tell us how things are structured.
Yeah. So I think if you want to be as successful in a process as possible, you want to understand all aspects. And that includes just taking a step back, right? So a recruiter, at the very core of it, their job is to be able to help teams fill some need, right? Be able to hire the right talent, to be able to build out some kind of product, or to be able to push some kind of incentive, things of that nature. So what does that entail? To keep your stakeholders or your hiring managers or these teams happy, you want to hire the right kind of talent based on what their need is. As long as your stakeholders are happy and you're facilitating this process as well as possible, then your job as a recruiter is being done well.
Now, I want to be really, really clear here, Hatu.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk stakeholders in your job, you're talking hiring managers, right? Is that
correct?
The primary stakeholder? Okay.
Yeah, so exactly. So those hiring managers, other individuals that are on their team, so their direct reports, those end up being their stakeholders. Now, on the flip side, Jeremy, talent, those are your stakeholders as well to a certain extent, but the incentive is more so focused on making sure that your hiring teams are happy. That's how you're finding the success.
Awesome. And so what kinds of goals might be set for you? Like if you're a salesperson in an organization, they're going to say, hey, you got to hit your quota, $1 million of sales. What does that look like for a recruiter?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So pass-through rate is something that's going to be focused on, right? So if you have screened a candidate and you bring them to the team, how many of them do they actually want to interview, right? People that get into process, how quickly are they getting through the process, right? So time to fill is another aspect that ends up being looked at as well. Another metric that can be looked at is acceptance rate, right? So the number of people that we make offers to, what's the percentage of them that are accepting our offers, right?
Wow. So in some ways, recruiters are like salespeople for people in the sense that you've got your funnel, but instead of a product that you're selling talent, you're selling opportunity.
1,000%. I always like to say recruiting as sales. It just ends up being a little bit of a different take on what you would normally see from a sales standpoint, but it's sales through and through.
That's awesome. Okay. So you've got these huge incentives on your side. You've got these hiring managers breathing down your neck. Just give people a sense of scale, like at Riot or at other places you've recruited. how many roles are you trying to fill at once? How many hiring managers you work with? How many candidates are you dealing with?
Yeah, and the answer to that point blank for a lot of those is it really depends.
Yeah.
Um, if it's a high volume kind of role, you could be working on 50 different roles at the same time, right? If it's a larger organization, you could be working with 20 different hiring managers. So each of them will probably have some nuance in the approach. So there's always something that's going on, right? You're just kind of like running around just trying to figure things out from that standpoint. So it really just depends on how busy the season is, how active the organization is in recruiting, and kind of what the hiring manager's needs are.
Okay, that's awesome. And so I'll just encourage everyone, please, if you've got questions, put those into the chat or even raise your hand if you'd rather ask live, because I will tell you right now that I am still learning about this space, even as a hiring manager myself. And so I would love to hear questions, as well as everyone else on the line would learn from your questions. So if there's anything you're curious about, put those in the chat and we'll make sure that Hatu gets a chance to respond. That being said, I want to get people into the actual process. So let's talk about some of those black box secrets and advanced techniques that you were talking about. In terms of using your recruiter appropriately, what's the right way that job seekers should be engaging with you?
Right, absolutely. So you now have an understanding of kind of like what the incentives are. So we're moving more so into just like what the best way as a job seeker is to get into an organization, right? Recruiters end up being facilitators a lot of times, right? Not decision makers. So Jeremy, you mentioned right there that you're a hiring manager. You know this as well as I do, that if a role comes up, it's because you're the one that has asked for the role, that you have stated that you need the role. If there's a hiring decision to be made, that ultimately rests in your hands. So regardless of how well I think someone did or other people on the team think, if Jeremy does not want to hire the person, then unfortunately the person does not get hired, right? So I always advise people to try to get as close to the decision maker as much as possible. Network your way in there through LinkedIn, through other means. If you can find the hiring manager, reach out to the hiring manager, introduce yourself, show them your profile. If it's something that they're interested in, then they will tell a recruiter to put you in process, right? And they'll keep a keen eye on your profile. Really what you want to do is be able to move the needle as much as possible. If you can't get to the hiring manager, get to somebody who is on the team or who is on an adjacent team. Because at that point, they have a good understanding of what the needs are of the team. They work on it day in and day out, and they work directly with the hiring manager. So the hiring manager is going to really trust their judgment when they bring somebody and say, hey, I think this person could be good, depending on what we're looking to do. Could you just take a look at their profile?
That's awesome. And so let's do our first live demo right now.
Yep.
And the way we're going to do this is you got to raise your hand right in Zoom. Whomever is first will get to go one-on-one with Hatu. And we'll actually take sort of a live query. Like you might say, hey, I want to break into Riot. I want to break into Blizzard. I want to break into Google, whatever the company is. And Hatu and I will find some hiring managers on the inside or someone inside that team who you could be reaching out to build those bridges. So raise your hand in Zoom. And as a little sweetener, the first person who raises their hand will get a free copy of my ChatGPT book sent right to you wherever you are in the world, to make that a little extra exciting. So our first volunteer is going to be Aditi. Aditi, feel free to unmute, turn on your webcam, and come and join us. Welcome, Aditi.
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Hatu.
Hey, how are you?
It's nice to meet you all. Hi, I'm good. Actually, a brief introduction about myself.
Yeah.
I'm actually currently a student of Syracuse University pursuing a master's in computer science.
Ooh,
I do have a work experience of 2 years roughly. And then I took a break for pursuing some government examinations, which unfortunately I couldn't clear. But now I'm back into tech. I mean, I'm doing my master's. So just want to know, how should I break through this gap that I have in my resume? Will having just the projects on my resume work, or do I need to do something extra? Because yes, I aspire to work for big tech companies, right? Google, Microsoft. So yeah, I need your inputs on that.
Yeah. So Aditi, throw down the gauntlet for us a little bit. Tell us the name of a specific tech company you're excited about, and maybe even a specific team. And we're going to try to find some insiders for you.
Okay, it has to be Microsoft.
Okay. And would you like to be working on Bing Chat? Would you be liking to work on Xbox? Like, what would you be excited about?
I'm actually a web developer, so I'll be interested in working in any team that has got more to do with front end development
Ah,
work.
Okay.
cool,
Okay.
So yeah.
cool. Okay, so Hajo, I'm gonna pull up LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You walk me through this process. Like, you
Yeah.
know that you want to work at Microsoft, you want to work on front end.
Mhm.
How would you find an insider to sort of get your foot in the door?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that really the same kind of way that you end up using it. Could you mute?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. There we go.
Oh, no worries. Okay, cool. So the same kind of way that you would use like Google or any kind of search bar is the same thing that you really want to do here on LinkedIn. A lot of times when you do the search initially, the first aspect that pulls up are people, and then sometimes it's the jobs, and
Yeah.
then eventually it ends up being any like companies as well. So what I would put here is first Microsoft, right? Then if you're looking at Microsoft, you may want to look and you play around with it a little bit, right? Look for profiles that maybe have some of the front end technologies, right? So on the front end, Microsoft will use React, right? So you may put React in there.
Ooh, cool.
Somebody's profile that has said that they work at Microsoft as a software engineer working in React,
Yeah,
right?
look at that. Bam.
Yeah, exactly. So React is something that's very specific, right? If you're front-end web developer, or if you're a web developer, then you understand what React is, right? As a framework. So anybody that has that Microsoft and React in their profiles, those profiles are going to end up popping up. And those are the people that you'd want to connect with to be able to understand more about the company. And if you have a more specific targeted like job description, then you can also add that as well, right? So if it's like Microsoft, if it's React and it's like Bing, like you were saying before, Jeremy, then that may be something that you put in, see if there's somebody that's there that will be able to give you a little bit more insight into what the team looks like, and then hopefully give you a referral.
Yeah. So let's just take an example here. Like, let's say you want to get in touch with Salman over here. He's working on Bing, he's got React, he's at Microsoft, obviously.
Yep.
How would you even like start to reach out to someone like that?
Yeah. So I think LinkedIn, I think there are a few different ways, right? So for LinkedIn, like in-mails end up being a great way to do it. The reason I said don't go to recruiters at first, because recruiters a lot of times get a lot of friend requests or connection requests, right? They get a lot of messages, and frankly, your message may just get lost in the wind. And especially if they're not working on that role specifically, then it doesn't end up getting you to the end point that you want.
Yeah,
so
I want to pause there for a second because back when I was at Michigan, we absolutely worshiped recruiters. They would come to campus and they represented Google and Microsoft, all these great companies. But based on the incentives you were talking about, it sounds like you don't have a really big incentive to get to know every student super deeply because you might have dozens of roles, hundreds of candidates. It's just not in your own interest to spend like 20 hours with me. Is that right?
Yeah, it is nice to get to know people, but at the end of the day, there's just not enough hours in the day.
Right.
Hours in the day to get to know everybody to that extent. And especially if you're not a good fit necessarily for that role. And for the people who want to get to know you, right, the prospective candidates, you're not getting to the end goal by just making a connection with a recruiter, because it may be so far off base of what they're working on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think this is a much sort of savvier approach from like an economic perspective, because Salman, who might be a hiring manager, has every incentive in the world to get to know you if you're an awesome developer, right? He's always looking for talent, and he may only have one role he's looking to fill versus Hatu has 20 roles he's got to fill.
Right.
So this is just a more powerful kind of relationship.
Correct. Exactly. So in that, you're going to introduce yourself, explain a little bit more about your background, say that you're interested in learning a little bit more about the role and the team, see if they can spare some time to speak, and attach your resume.
Yeah. Okay. So I saw that you're, leading hiring for the Bing Chat front end team or whatever. I saw that you need someone with experience in React and all these other things. Guess what? Those are the actual things I can do for you. So I'm adding value to your time, not just wasting your time. Is that right?
Exactly. So it's the same kind of thing that you're providing them. You're providing them with the resource. They don't even have to go out to market. You're like, hey, listen, here I am. If you want to learn more, let's discuss. Would love to learn more about the team. And then all of a sudden, that really puts you leaps and bounds past people who are just putting their applications in.
Yes. Okay. So let's pause for a second. Aditi, I got to thank you so much for volunteering, throwing down that gauntlet for Hatu. I will definitely be sending you a copy of this book. So just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I'll put my profile into the chat. And what I would love to do next is I would love to dive in some of the questions we're getting because we're getting flooded with questions here, Hatu, and
Do
these are
it.
juicy. So
Let's
again,
do it. Let's do
keep the
it.
questions coming, but I'm going to come back to a question I'm seeing a lot, which is how do you know who's actually hiring?
Yeah.
Solomon could be hiring 10 people or no one.
Yeah.
How do you kind of figure that out and navigate the internal bureaucracy?
Yeah, there's no perfect science, right? I think that with some of the key searches that you're doing, the goal here is that you want to get as close to the hiring manager as possible, right? Or get as close to an adjacent team as possible. So, for instance, you may reach out to Solomon and he may say, "Hey, I'm not hiring, but this person is," right? Hopefully, you've gone with a specific job in mind or job description, and he can say, "Hey, this isn't my team, but I can direct you to the person who is," right? So that is a good way to try and find out. Like, you're not going to necessarily know who the hiring manager is specifically. You may use some context clues to try and figure it out, but this is to get you as close to the decision maker as much as possible.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. So lots of questions about reaching out to the hiring manager, which is a great way to sort of dig in. I'll just give a little bonus hack. I don't know if you've ever tried this, Hatu, but all these hiring managers now are coming out of the woodwork, going onto LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I actually want you to reach out to me," which is a really great opportunity for you as the job seekers out there to say, "Hey, I'm going to reach out to Rajan. I'm going to reach out to Rupa," because they're not just the recruiter, they're actually the big boss.
Correct.
So, cool opportunity there. Now we got some questions about the ATS. I knew these were going to come up because everyone is always like, how does this applicant tracking system work? What's going on there? And maybe this is a good segue into our next topic, but just to set it up, like, what is an applicant tracking system? How does it play a role in your life, Hatu?
Yeah. Applicant tracking system, or ATS as we call it, is crucial because it really helps you organize everything. Just think of the way that in your phone you have a address book, right? Or your email that it organizes everything from a contact list. An applicant tracking system does that for recruiters. It really helps us manage the process from all the different inputs, right? It gives people a dashboard that they can look at to see what's going on in the process. From an applicant standpoint, you're putting in your information, we receive it, we're able to go through it, we're able to forward it through the other steps of the process, we're able to get other people to opine as necessary in the process, and we're all able to collaborate on making sure that we get you through the interview loop.
Okay, so this is kind of like the central nervous system of the hiring process.
Correct.
And so in terms of making sure that your resume stands out in this process, like obviously, as we just talked about, better to have a relationship with someone on the inside than just apply online. But at some point, people are going to probably apply for some kinds of jobs. So what's the best way to think about this? And I know you have some strong thoughts in terms of job descriptions and how to reverse engineer this whole thing.
Yeah. So I get asked questions all the time about applicant tracking systems. Are they using AI? It really depends on the company, on how they're using their applicant tracking system. Some recruiters will rely heavily on, I think the example that you just pulled up there, Jeremy, will rely heavily on indications of how strong of a match a role is, or an applicant is for a role based on what the ATS tells them. Others do not. I personally do not, because I just don't trust them to necessarily know the nuances of what I'm looking for. That being said, it is hard to stand out in just an application pool, because the quiet secret about it is that, like, you may have an application that's open, like by default, like once you post the role, the application opens, people are able to submit, but you're more so focused on, maybe you go on LinkedIn and you're sourcing, right, for different kind of profiles. So it's important to make sure that you're doing 3 different things in tandem. You're submitting your resume for the role, you're networking to find somebody who could get your resume pulled from the applicant pool, and then you're also making sure that your LinkedIn has as much detail as possible, especially based on some of those details that are on the job description. Because if a recruiter is going and searching for the right kind of candidate for those roles, if those keywords are popping up on your LinkedIn profile, then they'll reach out to you as well.
I just want to pause right there to really highlight what you said. so often job seekers see all the different ways you can apply for jobs as mutually exclusive. Either I'm going to apply online, or I'm going to network, or I'm going to work on my LinkedIn profile. What you're saying is you want to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Like, just because online applications have a low chance of success doesn't mean you don't apply online. You still apply,
Yeah.
but you also network and you also build a great profile so recruiters can find you. And that way you've covered all your bases. Is that right?
100%. I mean,
Okay.
in this environment too, it's going to really depend on the role and the environment. Some recruiters exclusively use applications through other process. They may not go out to source candidates. But if you're using just applications and you get 500 applicants within 3 days, then it's kind of a look of the draw of how early you actually got your application in. So that's one thing that I would say as well. You really want to cover all your bases. You want to make sure you submit the application, then reach out to somebody to try and get a referral, or to try and get in front of the hiring manager. And then you wanted to also make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date with different keywords and like has as much detail as possible, so that if a hiring manager is looking, if a recruiter is looking for different individuals to suit their needs, your name comes up within that query.
Awesome. So let's do two things next. Let's take a question from Jack, because I love that Jack raised his hand. And then before we do that, we will also do a live demo that brings all these things together and leads to a free profile review from Hatu himself. So get ready for that. For now, Jack, what's your question?
My question is, I'm trying to network into Workday, the company. And I tried these techniques you just mentioned, like Workday, I'm hiring. Well, everyone uses Workday for hiring. So everything that came up was irrelevant. It was not in Workday. They were simply using Workday. How do I get around it?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things that when you're doing these searches, you're working with computers, so they take things a little too literally. So I would really say that you want to get as granular as possible when it comes to that. So if you have a specific team that you're looking to get into, or there's specific skill sets that you want to utilize, those are probably the ones that you want to lean on more, as opposed to the I'm hiring. So if it's like Workday, if you want to do like infrastructure engineering or something like that, right? Like maybe that's what you want to use as you're searching on LinkedIn to find the right people to connect with.
Yeah, and just to give a really specific example, like the way I would think about it is you're just trying to build your own organizational directory and using LinkedIn and the job description as your guide. So if you know that the job you want is financial integration consultant, well, guess what you're going to search for? Workday financial integration. And you're going to start to reverse engineer who's in charge of this team, who's going to be the boss. And so if you can start to figure out, okay, here's Alnor, senior technology consultant, financial integration, Workday. Aha, he's either on that team or might be the hiring manager herself.
Right.
So I think it takes a little detective work, but it's totally possible. But yeah, great question, Kevin, and thank you for sharing that. Okay, I think it's time, Hatu. I know everyone is super pumped about this. So if you want to have Hatu review your profile right now, go ahead and raise your hand. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a specific profile, a specific job description, and we're going to bring it all together. Okay, I believe Hillary was first, because I think Leah may have had her hand raised for something else. Hillary, what is the job that you are most excited about?
I would like to get a job, and that's what I was just thinking. I don't have these specific keywords for title and field, and that makes the search more difficult. But I would like to get a mid-level job. Title could be anything, in livelihoods in international development.
Ooh, super cool.
All right.
Hillary's going to do good and do well, which I love.
And I'm also open to so many things, which makes it also so difficult.
Yeah,
so when you see my profile, there's no mention of livelihoods.
Okay, so let's start with this. Because Hatu is all about being a job description detective, or what did you call it, Hatu? A treasure map. I love that.
Yep.
Let's start with a specific example here. So we're going to say international development job, just to get an example. And again, everyone, try this out on your own computers. If you're curious to sort of figure out, hey, how do I get a job at Mercy Corps or whatever the organization might be, pull up that job description. Okay, so here's the job description. Super cool organization doing really meaningful work around the world. Now, Hatu, when you pull up this job description, what are you thinking about? What should Hillary really understand about this role?
Yeah. So Hillary, I think the first thing that I do when I see a job description, well, taking a step back, as the job descriptions that are written, right, the real main key areas that you want to focus on are qualifications and responsibilities, right? So qualifications, a lot of times, scroll down, Jeremy. Actually, let me see if there's anything else that I want to prioritize there.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of qualifications. This is really
good.
I
know.
Yeah, exactly.
And can you take a second, Hatu? Because where do job descriptions come from? Who's writing these things? If you go back to like the internal drama that is hiring.
Exactly. So it usually, depending on the size of the organization, it's the hiring manager working with HR, whether HR is the business partner, right? Or they're sometimes working with the recruiter. Me personally, I don't write job descriptions, but I do talk to the hiring manager a lot about the job description, like after it's written, because they write them with HR. So they're really using this as a way to narrow down, like, what is the company? What is the team? What are our needs right now? Who are we looking for? Here's what you'll be doing. That's really the bare bones core of what a job description is going to look like. So for that to be effective, you really want to make sure as a hiring manager or as HR that you're incorporating what kind of skills, what kind of tools, what skill set really makes you successful in this role. How are you going to fill the need that I have?
Awesome.
Right.
You can see there's stuff like, participatory process, driving donations, budgeting. Like these are the things that are really going to determine Hillary's success in this role.
Correct.
And so would you recommend that Hillary like highlight these things, or like how does she sort of get a sense of what to focus on?
Yeah. So this is my favorite thing to talk about, is the transferable skills, right?
Yes.
So even if you don't have the experience in this specific role, you don't have the specific title, you want to be able to convince them that you can do the job.
Yeah.
Right. That's the biggest thing. So if I have a job description and it says I need someone who can do grant writing, and haven't done grant writing per se, like you may want to try and highlight, okay, well, what are some, maybe like a proposal, you maybe done some proposal writing, right? Maybe you've done something else that can translate well to that, and use that as much as possible. Another aspect is like going through here, finding keywords, and you really want to like cut those almost and try as much as possible. Obviously, you don't want to misrepresent your experience. Try as much as possible to incorporate that on your LinkedIn and your resume, because what ends up happening is that recruiters they've read the job description, they've talked to the hiring manager and talks to the hiring manager on a consistent basis. So have you ever read a book and you know that you're looking for something and you're scanning a whole paragraph and you're only looking at specific areas for like keywords of what you're looking for? That's what's happening here. So the more they see the keywords that they have in the job description, the more they think the profile is a good fit.
Awesome. And so now let's get the rubber to hit the road. Hillary, if you would be so kind, are you okay with us pulling up a profile, not to criticize it, but to shower it with love?
Yeah, I'm going to get the link.
Okay, awesome. Please do. All right, Hatu, are you feeling good? You probably already reviewed 1,000 profiles today for your day job.
Yeah.
Are you ready to do 1,001?
I am.
Okay. And everyone, please root Hillary on in the chat. It takes a lot of guts to put your stuff out there, but it's the single best way to learn. Thank you so much, Hillary. Okay. So
thank you.
Hatu, you've come to Hillary's profile.
Yep.
What are you looking for? Just sort of give us your natural reaction and talk us through it.
So the first thing I do is I scroll all the way to the bottom.
Ooh, interesting.
Well, not that far. So I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The education section is usually where I scroll to.
Okay.
Because a couple of things, like I try and get a sense if there's an education requirement for the job that I'm recruiting for, then I use that. Even if there's not, I'm interested to just see kind of like what they have from that standpoint.
And quick question for you, Hatu, because I'm so curious about this. Are you clicking show all education? Because everything is compressed on LinkedIn now. Or are you like operating at the speed of light? You just look at the first couple.
Speed of light, first couple, right?
Okay,
first couple. I think like it just ends up being like they'll stack up on each other.
Yep.
So I'll look at the first couple. And I think that the other thing as well, which this isn't a perfect science, is sometimes like education is, if you have years for education, I get a sense of like kind of like, is this someone who's early career? Is this someone who's like mid-level? Is this someone who is like more so like director VP experience. It all kind of just that I'm using little clues to understand a little bit more about your experience.
So here's the big question. Number one, would you recommend that Hillary add years to her education? And number two, does that potentially open her up to ageism on either side in terms of being nailed down to a specific demographic?
Correct. So I wouldn't, it's not necessary. It's not necessary. I do think it can open you up, frankly, for ageism. So I think that like a lot of times when I see people don't have the dates is to prevent that, which I'm completely fine with. Because the next thing that I do is I start to scroll up.
Okay.
I look at the year. I start from the bottom.
Ooh, okay.
So,
start from the bottom of experience.
Yeah, of experience, and I start to scroll up. So I look at the years. For that, I click show all.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, this is great.
So for that, I click show all, and then I scroll all the way to the bottom here. Wow. And I'm like, okay, cool. I literally start to piece it together.
Yeah.
Right. So from there, I can tell, okay, probably like years of experience. I scan very quickly to see like years of experience, the tenure in the different places, the title.
And tell us how you're processing those things. Like, what do the years tell you? Is it like, are you looking for job hopping? And then what do the titles tell you?
Yeah, so I'm looking for, that's actually a really good question. So titles will kind of tell me the kind of roles that you've taken to try and understand a little bit more about where your like skill set and competency lies. I start to look at the companies that you worked for, just to understand like industry, expertise. I look at tenure because I look at job hopping as well, and role hopping as well. So I'm like scrolling through to see that. And then the skills you have here, those are good ways to, be able to highlight some of the things that you've done based on, if we're going back to that job description that you mentioned before, Hillary, like some of those skills that they mentioned there, you probably want to make sure that you're incorporating them as well.
Okay, so let's pause for a second and see. Obviously, there are some things that Hillary cannot control. Like you can't go back and change the past, change the companies you work for, change the timelines. Right. What could you do, if anything, with this section that would make her a more appealing candidate?
Yeah. So
through the titles, the framing.
The titles can be rigid. And you never want it to be if you're in the process of background check.
Yeah.
Where the titles were seen to be misrepresented.
Okay.
There are different schools of thought on that, but you just kind of want to err on the side of caution. What you can do is really utilize those descriptions as much as possible, right? So I literally would say take keywords from that job description and make sure that you're incorporating them as much as possible. That job description is pretty meaty. So there are a lot of things that you can say there from an experience standpoint, and you can sprinkle them into your profile. Because if the recruiter is searching and they use these, what we use are called Boolean strings. If we're searching from like the recruiter side of the spectrum, the only profiles that come up after we do like a Boolean search string are ones that incorporate certain keywords, right? Okay. So if your profile doesn't have those keywords or any mention of those keywords, your profile will not even come up in the search.
Interesting, because I noticed that like the job description really clearly calls for negotiation skills.
Correct.
I kind of suspect that Hillary is probably going to do negotiation all over the world. Yeah. But she hasn't used that exact language in her resume.
Yeah.
So she could actually miss out based on that.
And if you worked on some kind of cross-team project where you had to negotiate out something, right? If you're a product manager, for instance, just as an example, and you had to negotiate with engineers about like different, about the scope of a project, like those are different things that you can use and lean on those as like transferable skills and say, hey, listen, I know that I haven't done it in this context, but here are some other places that I've negotiated throughout my career.
That's awesome. And so here's a big question. I know everyone is thinking right now, how much is too much? How little is too little? It feels to me like Hillary's done a really good job filling this up. Like she has 3 or 4 bullets for every single thing. It's really detailed, really meaty. Does that make you happy? Does it turn you off?
It kind of depends. I do like that it is meaty. So there's a lot to like be able to explore from her profile. I will say that I feel like it depends, like your LinkedIn a lot of times should be reflective of what your resume looks like to a certain extent. So I would choose like the top for some jobs. I would have 5 bullets, right? For jobs that are not as important, especially based on what you're looking for, you may put one.
Right. So here's the interesting thing. Like Hillary might have thought, like I would have thought an hour ago, who cares about my first role? He's not going to look at it anyway.
Yeah.
But because you're starting there, maybe I slim this down and I bulk this up.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, sometimes it depends on the amount of experience that you have. Sometimes internship experience isn't helpful to have on there, or maybe your first few jobs may not be necessary to have on there, right? If they don't add value to what you're looking to get, then you don't have to include them, right? A resume is a highlight. It's not like a CV where it's like everything cumulatively that you've done. A resume ends up being a highlight of the things that you think are most pertinent to the role you're applying for.
It's like the sports center of your career, right? Just the best stuff.
Top 10.
And so I want to be really clear about this. You are looking at this profile in like 6, 10, 20 seconds, something like that.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. So all of this, double clicking, obviously it's important for us to understand, but again, you are operating at the speed of instinct.
Yeah.
So really what Hillary should be thinking about is not every last bullet, but again, how do I make it super clear that I've nailed the most important skills that Hatu will be looking for?
Exactly. And if you go back, Jeremy, if you go back to that main page, like a lot of it, that 10 seconds is the initial review to like build up a gut feeling of like whether I think I should even like explore this profile further or not.
Okay.
If I do think it's one that's worth exploring further, then you do obviously spend more time reading over it. But a decision on your candidacy from like an initial standpoint can happen within 10 seconds.
Got it. And so just to be clear, 10 seconds, bam. Do you read anything besides education and experience, or is that it?
Sometimes depending on the role, like I might look at the skills section to see like, especially for technical roles, might look at the skills section and see like, oh, what languages have you worked with and things of that nature. I would look at, if you go back, Jeremy, those skills that people endorse you for, I don't really care about those as much. Sometimes, depending on the role, like the licenses and certifications make sense and they're helpful. But if you scroll up, oh no, scroll. Yeah. Okay.
Go to recommendations.
Yes. No. Scroll up. Scroll.
Yeah.
Keep scrolling.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So you see how she has skills. You see how she has
embedded inside the experience.
Embedded. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the skills that you say that you used as well.
Yes. And Hatu, you know what you just did for me? This is like a huge light bulb moment. When LinkedIn added this a few months ago, where they have the skills inside the job description, I was like, what a hassle. Like, you already have your skill section. Why do you have this other thing? But clearly, if recruiters are staring at your experience, they don't want to have to also go down to skills. They want it in that one spot for 10 seconds. And that's why it's so important for everyone out there. Don't just put in your resume bullets, actually feed LinkedIn the skills in context, because that's where Hatu is looking. Wow.
And those will come up in search. Those will come up in search, and they really are helpful for someone like Hillary who is looking to do like a rely on transferable skills or make a career pivot. Then that is something that you're really going to lean upon. So really use those skills to your advantage.
Okay. Hillary, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your profile with us. Hopefully you have a good sense of what to work on in terms of really matching those skills up with the job description, getting them right into your profile where Hatu can see them, and make it easy for recruiters to say, yes, Hillary is the one. Okay, Hillary?
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Beautifully done. Thank you, Hillary. Okay, and definitely reach out to me for the book as well. That being said, Hatu, we have 10 bazillion questions about profiles and algorithms and everything. Let's try to take as many as we can before we move on to the next section.
Okay.
All right, let's just dive in. Nye says, what's your opinion on boot camps and certifications showing up in a LinkedIn profile?
Yeah. Okay. That's going to be role dependent, right? For boot camp, some certain companies are accepting of boot camps and they welcome them. Some do not, right? So if it's a boot camp for a software engineering role, right, and it's a boot camp that's highly regarded, then that is important to have. And especially if you're doing the boot camp and you don't have any kind of like technical background and you don't have any experience, then that boot camp is critical because that shows that this is your foray into that industry. You probably want to have some projects there. You probably also want to have like a GitHub link there as well. So you want to show that you have the prerequisites and you have the experience to be able to do the future role that you want to do. So in that kind of instance, then that boot camp or having that certification is going to be important. It may not be the be all end all, but it's important.
Okay, so I know that applies to some people. This next question applies to everyone. Eugene asked, and there's someone else asked as well, what about cover letters? Do cover letters actually matter?
Okay, cover letters. So here is my hot take. Hot take is I don't read them. They're not necessary. That being said, you really don't want to not include them if someone is looking for them. So if they are required, you should take them seriously, and you should do them. For certain roles, it really doesn't matter. It can, though, I will say, it can be advantageous because it could be a way that you're able to convey your excitement about a role. You can convey experience that you've had that may not be on your resume or may not be brought to life on your resume as much. So I have seen instances where someone has written something on a cover letter and it helped their resume get pulled. So I would say that they're not the most important thing. Making sure that your resume and LinkedIn profile are in tip-top shape end up being the most important thing. But sometimes cover letters could be used to your advantage.
Beautiful. Jolie's got a question that really, I think, nails the essence of what you just laid out for us.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Tailored cover letters, very tailored to the role and company, because I have seen instances also where a cover letter has been written for the wrong role or company, and then that's disadvantageous. Yeah. So making sure that you're tailoring it, then that's when you could potentially use it and utilize it well.
Good call out. Okay, so Jolie says, wait a second. All of my relevant experience is in volunteer experiences. And Hatu did not mention looking at volunteer experiences at all. Is the implication here that if you've done relevant volunteer work, don't put it in the volunteer ghetto, put it right there in the middle of the experience section?
Ooh, that's actually a tough one. Because volunteer experience, I mean, if the volunteer experience has those keywords, again, those keywords will come up. I do look at maybe the volunteering section a little bit, but like volunteerism is like sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. From a work standpoint, it doesn't correlate. Like that's like something that you have experience in. Like if it was like a project, right? Maybe like if the volunteerism is like a project, right? Then that's a different scenario. Put it in a project section, and that will make sure that it's seen and actually utilized more in consideration for your profile. But yeah, volunteerism isn't something that I necessarily look at. It's cool to see like, okay, nice. These are some causes that you care about, but from an experience standpoint, that's not something that I would generally look at.
Okay, huge props, Jolie. I think you have just taken Hatu and stood on the shoulder of giants, because that is a critical insight, which is, hey, if you've done amazing volunteer work, get credit for it in the place the recruiters are looking. I love that. Okay, Elizabeth is asking a question that I has heard so often on LinkedIn, which is the worst part about job seeking isn't the resumes or the ATS or the blah, blah, blah. It is the waiting forever to hear back and maybe never even hearing back.
Yeah.
Can you shed some light, Hatu, on what's going on the inside when we're dying on the outside?
Yeah. And the unsettling aspect of this is that like every recruiter, every role takes on a different process. I can provide some insight into some of the different aspects that come up. So say, for instance, you apply for a job, you're really excited about applying for the job, but you send in your application and the job has like 300 applicants, right? If there's only one person that's looking over those applications, they may have a hard time. It's not me. They absolutely have a hard time getting through all those applications, and it's not likely that they ever will, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind, that sometimes the speed at which you get the application in from when the role opens does end up making a difference, because those first few are going to be given more priority, and it's much more likely that those applications will be seen.
Yeah.
I
just want to share this fascinating chart, which is this company called TalentWorks did a study of when you apply for jobs and how often you get an interview. And just like you were saying, Hatu, there is a massive advantage to applying early versus applying a week or 2 weeks later. And so for anyone who's like, oh man, how do I boost my rates? Even if I can't get a referral, this is a super easy hack just by being on top of it. Just having automatic alerts coming to your inbox saying, hey, this is a brand new job, hop on it.
Yeah. And from the standpoint of like not hearing back or the ghosting, as I've heard, and this is a question that I hear about often, which unfortunately, really that kind of just ends up depending on like what the process looks like for the company. Maybe they have other people in process and they're trying to get them through the process and are taking time to reply to you, right? Maybe that role is being reserved for an internal, and you can see on that the slide, rejection slide that I have there, Jeremy. The rejection one.
Oh, okay. The rejection.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So these are a bunch of reasons that you may not get an offer, or that you may not hear back, or that you may get a rejection that really has nothing to do with you, right? So someone surfaced faster, right? It was filled by someone internally. They may have lost headcount for the role. There may be a freeze. These are things that really have nothing to do with you, that a company could be trying to sort out in the back end. So I try to tell people that, like, when you don't hear back, or like when you get a rejection, to not take it personally, as hard as it can be, to not take it personally, because it's really not about you. It really is about the process that they're running. And some of this, unfortunately, does depend on the timing.
Yeah. Okay, this is great advice. I know that we are down to our final 10 minutes, shockingly. So I want to go into lightning round mode here. Let's go back and cover pretty quickly some of the things you wanted to call out. So in terms of looking for the bigger picture, what should people know?
Yeah, for looking for the bigger picture, you really want to look at a job board as an indicator of the areas of focus that a company has, right? So if you see a lot of jobs that are focused in a certain function, or a team that's doing most of the hiring, then you should know that that's an area of focus for the company, right? So you can say, for instance, when Netflix hired like a head of games, right, in 2021, then you can see, oh, okay, maybe they're looking to do something in games. Or if you see that a bunch of research scientists are being hired at a specific company, or like Google, I was doing a search on Google actually earlier today, and I saw a lot of roles that were focused on cloud and research scientists, then it's like, all right, cloud and AI are areas of interest. So I think that is for you, it's important to know, because that will affect your trajectory with the company. If you're looking for a role that's not necessarily on the team or in a function that is prioritized by the company, that may affect your experience.
So definitely be a smart reader, not just of job descriptions, but of the entire job board to see where the company is headed. Doesn't make sense for you. I love that one.
And then any kind of,
sorry about that.
Oh, no, sorry. And then just to even expounding further than that, look at management changes. Those definitely do make a big difference. So for instance, if a company hires like a new chief X officer or chief Y officer, then that probably shows the direction that they're looking to go into. If they hire a CEO that's focused on international expansion, then you can see some international expansion from a strategic standpoint coming down the line. So pay attention to those.
Love that. Okay. How about contract work? I think this is a huge opportunity that so few people know about.
Yeah, I love contract work. I think contract work is amazing, because you really don't want your W-2 or your day job, as people call it, to limit your market value. So if you're looking to break into a company, if you're looking to build out a certain skill set, if you're looking to just be able to get into a certain industry, contract work is a really great way to do that, because from your standpoint, you're getting that exposure, you're getting paid for it, you're able to build out that skill set and that portfolio. And for the company, they're able to get someone to help on a specific project for a limited amount of time. They don't have the risk of making a full-time hire or having to go through as extensive of a process. So I would really utilize that to be able to gain whatever you want out of it, and make sure you know what you want to get out of contract work before accepting a role.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, even for me, like, I was doing a contract project at 23andMe, and after I'd done the project, all of a sudden, when they were thinking about hiring, they didn't even put out a job description. They said, hey, why would we go out and hire some stranger when we've just spent 6 months getting to know you? And so I think Hatu is absolutely right. It comes back to relationships and it comes back to trust. And if you want to find opportunities like this, guess what? You can actually find them right on LinkedIn. You could say, hey, I want to do product management. I want to do UX research, whatever it is. And for whatever field you're interested in, sure enough, there's going to be the ability to come in here, come over to experience level, come over to all filters and say, hey, I want to find a job that matches contract work or temporary work or internship work, whatever you want, that is available.
Right.
Okay. Hatu, where do we want to go next?
Okay.
We want to talk about next steps or anything else that we didn't get to during our session so far?
I'm trying to see, go up a couple slides. Let's see. We talked about that. I think we did a good job of covering it. So
yeah.
The last one I would talk about with the rejection aspect as well. I mean, get that last slide. Really don't, especially in this environment, I know that it is difficult and I know that it is a tough and competitive job environment. You really want to make sure that you're taking care of your mental in the job search. So don't beat yourself up if you get a rejection, if things seem to be going well, and then all of a sudden you don't get the response that you're looking for. It doesn't mean that it didn't go well. You really want to try and use this as a place to like turn what is seemingly a negative into a positive. Thank the recruiter and the team for their time. Ask for any feedback. If they're able to give you feedback, that could be helpful to know things that you could use to improve or bolster your profile or some of the submission materials that you had. If there are roles that are coming up in the future and you've done well, they may put you on a short list, right? And reach out to you about those roles. I keep lists of candidates that have done well. And if they've rejected us or, we rejected them, even if a role comes up, I'm like, oh, this person may be good for that role. And I reach out to them. So really utilize that. An interview process, a strong interview process can be a good way to almost get your foot in the door. And it can, get things moving at the speed of light when things do open up again.
And I just want to double click on that idea of staying in touch with the recruiter. I don't know why this is hot to. Maybe it's because recruiters are so good at applying for jobs themselves. But all the recruiters I know tend to get jobs at all the companies out there. They never stay more than a year or two at a company. Yeah. Let me just show the woman who helped me break into tech. So there I was, former kindergarten teacher at University of Michigan, trying to get a job, in tech for the very first time. Lily hired me. She was my recruiter at Apple. And check out her profile. Did she stay at Apple forever? No way. That would be too boring. She went from Apple to Facebook to Solima Group, headhunting, to Twitter, to Palantir, and on and on and on. And so if you build a really great relationship with the Hatus of the world, chances are when they open their Rolodex in the next role, because they're going to be out there, they will be thinking of you. Be nice to the Hatus of the world. That's my advice. Okay, that being said, Hatu, you've been so kind today. I want you to tell folks about how they can stay in touch with you, and then maybe we can stay on the line and answer one or two questions if you've got time. So just absolutely. Let folks know how can they learn more? How can they get involved with Power Pivots?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm really passionate about it. Jeremy, first of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. I really enjoyed this session. I love to be able to help people understand more about how you approach the job searching process and what the black box of recruiting really looks like from the other standpoint. But here's some of my information. This is my LinkedIn profile. If you want to shoot me a connection request and let me know that you came to this session, would be more than happy to connect there. If you want to email me, you can email me at powerpivots@gmail.com. If you want to connect with the show, throw us a like on LinkedIn, or even listen to the show or follow on socials and things like that. I'm actually going to be dropping season 2 in the next week or two. So stay up to date on that and catch up if you have not listened thus far. And I will also be offering more tailored and targeted coaching services as well. So whether you need to do resume or LinkedIn reviews, whether you need to do just job strategy for searches, whether you want to do interview prep as well, I have a interest form there. Fill it out. Let me know that you filled it out, and we can set up a time to discuss what exactly your needs are and what the rates look like.
That's awesome. And just so everyone knows, yes, you will definitely get the recording. You'll get these slides, you get these links. So feel free to reach out to Hatu and check out his podcast. I love it. So now we're down to our final 3 minutes. Let's take maybe 2 or 3 final questions.
Let's do it.
And so let's get something really juicy. Oh, this is great. Morgan has the proverbial question about compensation. How should you answer that interview question? They say, hey, what's your expected salary? Or
you know what?
Too low and we're not willing to accept the position. Too high, the company won't even be interested in us. Are we just screwed? Is there any way to get through this?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. A really good question. And I think we had it on one of the slides, but I think it's better that we talk through it real time. Yeah. So with a lot of the pay transparency laws in the US, now companies have pay ranges or pay bands, base pay bands on job descriptions. So don't just rush through the job description and then skip through some of the other stuff about their policies and what may seem to be the jargon. Embedded in a lot of those job descriptions, they have for certain areas, this is what we're paying for that. So the truth is always somewhere in the middle with that, right? But you want to use that as a tool to make sure that you're not asking for something or being offered something that's below the pay band, right? So in initial conversations, it's good when that conversation comes up of like, okay, what are you expecting? I always ask that in initial conversations because I don't want to waste your time if you're looking for something that's a lot higher. And I also don't want to waste the team's time as well if it's something that we can't meet in the middle for. So from your approach, I think the best way to answer the question is asking them, well, how do you break down compensation? Like, what are the different components that make up your compensation? Because you can say, hey, this is what I'm targeting from a base standpoint, which is obviously the guaranteed compensation that you get from an annual salary. But then from a total comp standpoint, whether that's like bonuses, whether that's equity, things of that nature, this is what I'm targeting, right? So if it's something that makes sense, then you'd move forward. If it's not something that makes sense at that standpoint, then you go your separate ways. Now, when it comes further in the process and you're doing negotiations, right? Like they start to ask you more compensation questions. That's an indicator that things are going well. You want to make sure that you're utilizing your recruiter as much as possible to facilitate that information. So sometimes the more that we know, the better it is, right? You don't have to share what you're making, right? A lot of times, actually, recruiters are not even allowed anymore to ask what you're currently making, but you can say, this is what I'm targeting from a compensation standpoint. You can reiterate that. And then you can give them the more information you give as to why that is, the better it is. From the standpoint of like, hey, I have an offer for X from this company at a similar role. Obviously, we want to be truthful about the information that we're using. That will help the recruiter know, okay, well, they're leaving this on the table. Sometimes if your compensation is higher in your current role, you can be like, well, my base is currently this, and then with bonus, I make X, Y, Z. Then that can start those conversations of like, all right, well, we need to maybe increase the base that we're offering the candidate, or use other mechanisms like a sign-on bonus, equity, something along those lines, right? Any kind of money that you're leaving behind is also a good lever as well. So your base is lower, any kind of bonus that you'd be missing out on, any equity that you would be missing out on as well that would be vesting, those are good ways to be able to get more money. So use compensation in that regard to your advantage. When you have concrete information, that helps as much as possible, and recruiters can convey that.
I love that. Well, Hatu, that is a perfect note to end on, because I think the real testimony to how mind-blowing this has been is I've spent 10 years studying all this stuff, and I still learned a ton of new stuff today. And I know everyone else is feeling the same way. So everyone, please give so much love to Hatu, taking an hour of his day to spend even more time looking at LinkedIn profiles. And thank you all for participating. It was so fun to connect with you all. Sorry we didn't get to every last question, but again, Hatu is super approachable. Here's his profile again. Here's my profile. Feel free to reach out. And that being said, we're heading into the holiday season. So here's wishing you lots of excitement ahead and then new adventures in the new year. And we just cannot wait to celebrate your success. Thank you, Hatu. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers all.